Welcome to AI, Government and the Future, a podcast by Corner Alliance. We explore the intersection of artificial intelligence, government and the future with your host, Alan Pentz. We work with government to create results. We ignite your agency's mission by helping you to design and implement high-impact and innovative federal programs in AI, broadband, cybersecurity, public safety, and more. Being a government ally is at the core of all we do. Introducing your host, Alan Pentz.
Hey, welcome. Joining me today is Arshad Hisham, the founder and CEO of inGen Dynamics. Arshad is an internationally recognized serial entrepreneur. He's an engineer and inventor with a pretty robust academic background. He's got degrees in business engineering projects and an MBA in entrepreneurship and finance from Cranfield School of Management over in the UK. So he's got a lot more degrees and letters after his name than I do. And he's worked with companies like IBM, Toyota, Volvo, Citibank, as well as Government of Australia and Greece. And he's been instrumental in shaping the trajectory of hardware automation and enterprise software. And really, he's a huge expert in robotics and AI. And that's what we're going to be talking about today is a combination of this. So welcome, Arshad. Welcome to the podcast. Appreciate you coming. So tell us a little bit, just to get started, tell us a little bit about, you talk about sort of a phased approach to robotics or to your product line. So give us kind of like a quick overview of what you guys are offering and how that, and kind of the use cases those offerings have.
Sure. First of all, thank you, Alan, for inviting me on the talk. It's a pleasure to be on the call. And we live in a very interesting time. So I do get invited every other day to some of the talks because obviously AI and robotics has caught everybody's attention. And I think we live in a very interesting time. And you just heard a bit of my background. What I've not publicly written in a lot of places is that I'm a big science fiction fan. I like Asimov, Battlestar Galactica. So I think, and one of the things that I want to do.
I just watched episode 4 of Foundation last week. Yes.
Oh, nice. I think you should read the book. The book is.
I did.
The book is way better. You should read the book. I think it's a compressed version. So I think, and one of the things that I want to do very early on, and one of the reasons I became an entrepreneur, is to bring a lot of the science fiction to reality. It's kind of what drives me, to build all these companies. It's not a money thing, right? So I think it's been an interesting journey, and this is my 5th company, and I've started a hardware automation company. I've done an ERP company, some with a good degree of success, some didn't go well. I guess that's part of the game. But I think when I started the robotics and AI company in 2015, I did come with a lot of experience in hiring, sales, fundraising, acquisition, and I even sold one of the companies to a large conglomerate. So I think there was a lot of that experience. So, the thing with robotics and AI is that it's extremely hard to build a company in robotics and AI. And that's where I think this phased approach, the modular approach, are not just buzzwords. It's essential for you to have meaningful progress as a company, right? You can't just say I can give a hypothetical example. I don't believe in saying that we'll build a humanoid and invest $50 million and wait for 6 years before we do anything. So the modular approach and the phased approach, the difference is that we have less complex, simpler form factor with immediate needs. For example, elderly care. There is an immediate need in elderly care. Restaurant robots, severe shortage in restaurant labor force all across North America, right? Clear need. So you have simpler form factor where there's a clear need, and the phased approach means rolling this out in a phased manner and slowly increasing the complexity and targeting more complex use cases as we grow. So this is kind of a crux. And if you think about it, it's really common sense, right? Why would you not do this, right? This is the right way to build a business and build a product out. You don't want to kind of create a very fancy robot, there's so many applications, and you kind of end up being out there. So I think that's the crux of it, and it's modular. And by that we mean that the mobility unit, the top part, can all be interchanged. So we have an ecosystem, right? And again, this is coming in from the complexity of hardware. So hardware is notoriously hard to build. Okay, hardware is hard to build. So it makes sense to reuse and a lot of the structure that you build in different form factors, which is what you've done. And that's actually the right thing to do in building out robotics product. And similarly with AI, I think we have an origami AI platform, which we've developed since 2015, right? And that's running and powering all our products. So it's kind of getting better, more intelligent, and looking forward to the future is going to power our rover and humanoid as well. So this is kind of our vision of how we kind of progress with the products and how we kind of get to the next steps. Yeah, I think it's been an interesting journey. So yeah, I mean, I would say, Alan, I think the phased approach and the modular approach is basically common sense. I mean, that's the right way to go about introducing complex products to the market, unless you have a lot of investor money to burn. So then it's a different story. You can take a punt on it.
Well, it
so
sounds like you might have a little bit more than you used to. So we just saw that you've got a commitments up to $150 million during what everyone's saying is a VC drought. Although I guess AI is a bright spot there. But congratulations on that. That's tremendous.
Thanks, Alan. Thank you very much. Yeah, but I think pretty much. I think we have. I mean, one of the fascinating things with inGen is that the quarter one of this year, all our previous investors doubled and tripled the commitment. So This is kind of a fascinating thing for the company because we have, and even our retail investors who participated in 2017, I just got an email from one of our early investors saying that he wants to invest. How do they put money, right? So we just have people clamoring to jump in the bandwagon. But I think a lot of that has to do with the AI buzz, the ChatGPT, the prevalent, all the AI buzz going on. But I also believe, as I mentioned to you earlier on, we didn't pivot to an AI company. We started in 2015 as a hardcore AI and robotics company when it was a very uncool thing to do. Okay, so nobody even looked at us a second time.
Yeah, exactly. So you guys kind of started with a platform, right? Which is origami. It's called.
That's right.
So that's an AI platform for robotics, and then started building actual robots on top of that. So. From what I saw first was kind of a stationary robot with an interface that can interact maybe in an elder care home, remind you to take your medication, and then that you're going to make that module mobile, right? So it can move around and talk to people. And then what comes after that, do you see?
Yeah, I think let me kind of rephrase the whole thing, right? It's easy to look back and connect the dots. But what really happened is that when we started out, we didn't realize at that time that we were building origami. Okay, we were just trying to build the robot. So we ended up creating a lot of the core components required for a platform. And even the word origami has a good backstory. So what's origami, right? It's your paper thing that you create So I think there's a reason we call it the origami platform is that our platform is like you can actually repurpose it to different shapes and verticals. So you kind of repurpose, take the modules, recreate it. You can roll it out on healthcare. You can roll it out on elderly care. So it's kind of a reason that we call it origami. So when we started out, we did not know that this will become a prevalent platform. We were trying to create our core robot platform. Then we started building AI modules for it. We started building hardware products for it. And along the way, we realized that there were takers for the AI modules. So we then spun out the AI module and started selling it, right, as software. And then I think the product, we were part of a prestigious accelerator called Plug and Play in Palo Alto. It's one of the top 5 accelerators in the US. So there we got feedback from Johnson & Johnson, Pfizer, a lot of inputs on how a healthcare use case would look like. So we kind of pivoted. And along the way, the origami platform got built, right? So this is kind of a journey, and I'm pretty sure most of the successful companies didn't know how they will end up in 8 years when they started. So it's similar to us, right? It was kind of an evolving story. We got feedback from the market. feedback from the R&D, and we kind of reached at a point. And then I think in 2020, we realized that origami is a core of our company strategy, and it's not only for our products. We had other partners, external companies who want to use it as well, right, from a commercial perspective. And that's when it really occurred to us that this is a core asset of the company, and this was going to drive the company forward.
Oh, fascinating. That's really cool. And so the goal is over time, you have this platform that's flexible, and you kind of build an increasing level of sophistication of robot. And then eventually, I mean, I guess the goal is to have a humanoid robot that can perform lifting and, other type tasks. So what is that ultimate goal? I mean, what do you see that humanoid robot doing in the future?
Sure. I think we have an ambitious vision, right? I think I'll throw some large numbers out there. If you see the world's total GDP, I think in 30 years would be around a pretty large number. And if you see around 60% of the world's GDP is driven by manual labor, right? Let me throw the stats out there. So I think that's a solid number. And you're talking about 100 trillion opportunity in 30 years. If there is automation, robotics taking over, there's a large opportunity.
So if we're about, I think we're about, what are we right now? US is 25 trillion. So we're about 25%. So we're at 100 trillion, but in 50 years, it'll be even more than that, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I think, then I think it's a huge opportunity. And I think this is going to happen. And the goal is to elevate human capabilities with AI. It's very simple. This is what we do. And we don't want to kind of we want to kind of automate and eliminate jobs that people can't do or won't do, right? Very important, right? This is a goal. And we want to free up people to do the things that really matter, increase productivity. And there is a common misconception that, AI and robotics will replace jobs. I really don't think so. This has happened in every revolution, right? Industrial revolution. If you see the history, there's always been naysayers. I think this is going to open up and create more jobs, and it's going to increase productivity. So definitely there'll be a lot of reskilling. There'll be some pain in the labor market, right? But I think it's going to be I'm an optimist, right? I'm an entrepreneur. Right. I'm an optimist. I'm pretty certain that it's a rosy future.
Look at demographics, right? Look at demographics. Like one of my mentors, Greg Crabtree, he does a lot of consulting for small business, and he firmly said 2019 we ran out of labor, and it's not coming back. And so you're seeing that now. The statistics out of China are pretty alarming, and even India looks like it's peaking. And so we're just not going to have the manual labor. So I think you're coming.
And I think you must have seen it firsthand. If you go to restaurants during the pandemic, you must have seen the labor shortage firsthand, right? And the airports, right? They're not in Europe. There are not enough people in airports to check in. Some airports had to close. So I think it was kind of and these are the areas that are ripe for disruption early on. That's why the restaurant robot, there's 1 million plus restaurants in the US. And even if 100,000 of them adopt robots, and we sell maybe 2,000, 3,000 robots, that's a 30 million opportunity recurring. Just look at the size, right?
So right now, I think we're probably most likely to see the robots show up as tabletop robots or small form factor doing specific tasks, interacting with people to take care of mundane tasks, before we ever see this humanoid lifting up boxes or doing other type manual labor.
Sure, I think there are two schools of thoughts, right, Alan? I think there are people who believe that I would say that even big companies trying humanoids, I think the humanoids, a fully integrated, usable humanoid addressing all the right cases, is probably 7 years away, whatever everybody's saying. So 7 years. 7 to 10 years away, I think. So I think.
Okay. So where do you think I'll first see a robot? Like any kind of robot?
I think you're already seeing it. You're probably going to see it in restaurants. You're going to see the tabletops, which is already there. I think we have multiple requests and things running out. Then you have the elderly care facilities, and it's already happening. I think a lot of the restaurants, even if you go to Singapore, Amsterdam, I mean, a lot of the restaurants, I mean, it's kind of fascinating. I was seeing a video where robots and people, they work so seamlessly with each other. It's fascinating, right? They kind of, it's like they play tag. They kind of take the plates, this
Gotcha.
moves in. It's as if, they're not even stepping on each other's toes. So you're going to see a lot of that over the next 10 years. And probably you're going to see some mainstream applications of humanoid from 7 to 10 years out, right? We also have a robo form factor, which is an autonomous security unit, which I think would kind of be very useful in securing outdoor locations, right? Instead of having security guards running around the clock. Again, it will supplement. Rather than having 5 security guards, you may have like 2 security guards and 3 rovers, right? More efficient and around the clock. So I think you're going to see that phase first, and then probably the next phase. I think the next phase is a question up in the air. I mean, you don't know whether, AI and robots with humans is definitely happening now in the next 5 years, right? For sure.
Yeah.
Now, a standalone AI and robot making autonomous decision, that's a scary part. And going back to some of your question on killer robots and weapons, right? Do we really give that level of autonomy to robots and AI? Needs to be seen after this first phase. I think we need to cross the first phase first. Right.
Right. Well, let's go back. I will go back to that in a minute for the Terminator stuff, but that's the juicy stuff. But first, so do you guys have product out in the field now, or is that sort of emerging currently? It sounds like.
No, I think we have several units out. We have close to 1 billion hours of operation in the field for several of our products. So because it's a phased approach, we are not we are an R&D company, but we have made sure that we started shipping everything, right? We have things out there in the real world accumulating hours, which is super important, right? And that's what I think, seeing a lot of these robotics companies doing R&D and just to give you an example, there are some companies like building flying cars, which will come out in 10 years and cost $200 million to make. I mean, this is like taking a punt out there. I think it's the wrong way to kind of look into the market, because robots and AI needs real world data. You need to get things out in the real world, get feedback, repeat, get feedback, repeat. So this has to happen. Yeah. So I strongly believe that.
We should be starting to see robots like yours, if not yours, in the next year or two deployed, right? It's sort of the sense I get.
Yeah. So we already shipped worldwide. I think we have shipped a lot of our units. We've shipped the mobility units. We're doing several pilots for the restaurant. So yeah, I think a lot of activity going on. I think a lot of interest, and people have realized that. I mean, earlier, Alan, I think like 3-4 years back, a robot was like a fad, right? It's kind of a cool thing to have in a restaurant or a shop where people can come and say, "Oh, it's so cool. It's an AI or a robot." But now they have a real use case for it, which is what is changing, right? They're seeing the value. They're saying, why we should spend money on it, because you're going to get a 2x, 3x return on investment in 6 months. So that's becoming very clear to people now at the business. So I think it's a good time.
Yeah,
they're picking up.
My sense is once you get a restaurant chain, a fast food, or these fast casual, like once you show that savings and the ability to have maybe 1 or 2 people rather than 10, it's going to go like wildfire, right?
Absolutely. And I think there's a lot of room for a lot of players. Not only us, even if like there are 10 players, I think there's a lot of room for everybody. And this is the beauty of the emerging AI and robotics evolution.
No more people at Applebee's, I guess. But let's go back to the scary part, right? So you kind of are at the intersection of what everybody's worried about, which is AI, autonomy, and robots. So what are your, and obviously this podcast focuses a lot on government. We talk about regulatory issues. So, I mean, what are you hearing and what are you thinking about, the dangers of this? You kind of mentioned a little bit like, hey, we need to see how this goes with this next phase where we have tabletop or maybe, limited mobility robots. But what are people thinking and talking about in that field?
Sure. I think the first thing I would like to add that we take this seriously, right? I think with everything that's being developed, we need to understand what you're dealing with. So we have actually appointed a very seasoned expert on AI ethics and responsible innovation. I think her name is Dr. Revit Totan. She currently co-chairs the ethical research at University of Pittsburgh. She's been involved. She's frequently quoted by TechCrunch and New York Times on a lot of AI and ethics articles. So we've been working with her to formulate some of the core tenets, right? And some of the things, again, there's kind of a low-hanging fruits here. Like there are things like control problems. There are things like data privacy issues, right? There are things that we need to kind of address bang on. I think the control problem is one that could potentially blow up as the killer robot problem, right? The control problem means that if you take an algorithm of a robot or an AI product, what level of autonomy? I mean, what are the points in the algorithm where it makes control decisions, right? And do we need an oversight? So if you kind of intercept these points and have an oversight in each of these points, you could de-risk it to some extent, right? So you won't let the AI product or the robot to make this control decision until you get an input from a real human, right? And I think that's required. So I think, and especially even in things like elderly care, or, there is a legal requirement from the FDA to kind of have this also human in the loop, right? So I think control is pretty much an important part of preventing a potential problem. And I would say that Hollywood tends to glamorize killer robots, right? Hollywood loves killer robots. So if you're talking about Terminator, Battlestar Galactica, but I think the bigger problem is what I call a paperclip maximizer scenario. It's a classic example, right? You accidentally trigger it. I don't know if you heard about it, right? You create an algorithm to maximize paperclips, and it just goes offhand, and it ends up converting the whole world to a paperclip by mistake, right? So that's the real thing that we need to be worried about. We may accidentally trigger one of this. And for the AI doesn't have emotion. It just goes about doing its job efficiently, right? It's just like if you're building, it's like when you are crossing the road, you see an anthill, you step on the ant, but you don't actually like or hate the ant. It's just inconsequential to you. I don't want to put it like this, but the thing is that this is how an AI would look. I mean, AI doesn't hate or love you, but it's just inconsequential. You're just a barrier to this core objective, right? And that's the risk. So we're going to hit the paperclip maximizer first before we hit any doomsday scenarios. And any doomsday scenario would be an evolution of the paperclip maximizer scenario. This is the way I would look at it, right? But there is a real risk. I think, you're playing with fire. We are dealing with, even ChatGPT has passed bar exams, scored 90% in a lot of the tests. So I think it's, and it's intelligent. I think there's a debate where people say that it is not intelligent. It's actually a language model that is creating and connecting answers. But the trouble with that is that that's what the brain also does to a large extent, right? I mean, what does a human brain do?
What's the difference?
Right. So so I think it does the job well. So I think there is a real scenario. There's a real risk. We need to be careful. And this is something for the first time in human history. I think it's exciting and terrifying at the same time. It's the first time in human history. I think we have something this powerful. I'll let that sink in for a minute.
Yeah. Well, and is there any way, obviously you mentioned Asimov earlier. So do you think there's any way to hard code in the laws of robotics or something like that? Is that a solution that is available?
Yeah, we could do that. I think the society needs to be prepared for the changes. I think this is where I think the government should be concentrating, right? For the employment market, I think most of the jobs that exist now in 10 years is not going to exist. It's going to change drastically. So is the government ready to reskill people to kind of get them for the next labor market? It's not that there won't be jobs. There will be jobs, but the jobs will be different. And I think it's the government's job to kind of prepare for this new future. Right now, they are not seeing the bus coming. Right, it's coming, and I think it's going to hit us soon. And I think at that time it'll be a problem. In terms of legislation and regulation, it's a very, very tricky area. I mean, if you see the censorship on internet, how much of that really worked out, Alan, right? I think we have tried. And once a cat is out of the bag, it's out of the bag, right? There is limited things you can do. I mean, right, tomorrow, if the United States and the EU decides that they're going to ban AI research, what difference do you think it's going to make, right? It's going to still continue in corners of the internet and corner labs, and it's going to still make its way out of the labs.
Longer, but
yeah.
No, my fear is current. I mean, I've been pretty vocal about this. Current regulatory talk and what the EU's done really focuses on what I think it's going to amount to is protecting current special interests. So job protection, trying to shape the dialogue for political benefit. You know, like I say, like AI alignment can't mean agreement. So you can't, alignment doesn't mean that the AI has to agree with you, right? And very little concentration on the existential risk. And I think most of the regulation right now will probably hobble AI's beneficial effects and do nothing to stop the doomsday scenario. So that's what I'm hoping through part of the podcast.
Yeah, and I think there's an interesting analogy. I don't know if you saw the movie Oppenheimer. You must have seen it. It's one of the recent movies that has come out. I mean, there is an incident in the movie where when they trigger the atom bomb for the first time, they don't know whether it will cause a chain reaction that will destroy the world, right? So that's a good analogy, right? There is a risk. There's a clear risk, and people did calculate it. So the trouble with AI is that, I mean, that's only one track. Trouble with AI is that you're going to have an infinite number of tracks for each use case you're developing in 5 to 10 years. So there is some serious work we need to do in figuring out, what are the endpoints and, how do we get there, right? Humanity for its own good has been pretty smart about these things throughout history, right? So my bet is that people will figure out. I think there'll be human in the loop for each of the decision before we give it full autonomy. There are going to be some mistakes. There are going to be some accidents. Again, you can't avoid it. But I think we need to figure out these use cases that's going to potentially blow up. I think that's kind of important.
Well, I do feel like there's a part where, people talk about Terminator robots. And to be honest, like, I think we're going to build Terminator robots with or without AI, like depending on how, AI, at some point AI is just software, right? So processing data. But, if humans are directing robots and using them to fight with each other, I don't know. That just seems to me like that's like a drone now, right? So I think that's going to happen. So part of the vision, I think, is going to happen no matter what, because we're going to build it. I think the fear is somebody creates like a agent GPT type open source that can upload into a humanoid robot. And all of a sudden you have this robot that you can give like vague commands to, and then it can do all this extrapolation and ends up with a paperclip problem, right? I think that's sort of my version. It's not, we are going to build killer robots no matter what. And the military is going to do it. It's just a question of like, are we going to have these autonomous things that have their own ability to evolve, or like, do they, at some point, do they get smarter than we are? Those kinds of things, I think, are what the most worry is.
Yeah, and I think, see, as you said, Alan, I think it's going to happen, right? I mean, even if you or me don't agree, or even if like big companies, let's look at even big companies, let's say even Google, Microsoft, and Apple, let's say 3 of them comes in and decide, and Amazon, and they have a policy that it's still going to come out of the labs and somebody's going to create it, right? And it's very hard to keep these things under wraps, so it's going to come out. Yeah, and that's my whole angle with a company, right? If you can't prevent many of the things, you might as well as join the race and probably try your best to make a better outcome for all of us. So this is the way I think
you listed your potential humanoid robot as 5'4", so I was glad that you made it shorter than I am. If it were taller than I am, I'd be more worried.
Sure, and that's kind of interesting. I think that's kind of an interesting thing. People are intimidated by robots that are bigger. It's kind of an intimidating. There is something called an uncanny valley, where the closer you make a robot to a human form, human face, and emotion, it just freaks us out. It's kind of an interesting topic for another day. Right?
I'm sure that's going to be a ripe field for study in the future. And then tell us, actually, one thing I didn't hit on earlier. I'm curious. So it sounded like you announced that you guys are using ChatGPT in some of the more near term robots, so like tabletop and restaurant. And so how is that going, and how has that changed things at all?
Yeah, I think it's a very powerful tool, right? So we could use it. We could create templates for elderly care. We could, and if you build a bit of a customization, I think it opens up a whole plethora of new ways to communicate. And this thing is really, really powerful, right? I think you can really teach it a lot of stuff. It still needs a filter, but it can have a more fluid interface uh, with people. And I think robotics, so there is a lot of use case for large language models in robotics, right? And I'll give you an interesting example is probably understanding the environment is kind of a problem similar to LLM. So if a robot looks around and it wants to comprehend what it sees, where it is, what it has to do, then an LLM trained to do that. LLM is a large language model, which is what a ChatGPT is, right? So an LLM trained to do that could have a direct use case in robotics, right? So once you build some of this for robotics, I think there is an interesting use case for that. But ChatGPT on its own, I think it kind of makes it easier for a lot of people to interact with the robot, because now you can ask all kind of questions, and we don't need to filter and process, and
Yeah, templating seems like a really powerful thing in ChatGPT
yeah.
that you can have. The other thing, my take is LLMs will become, I mean, obviously there'll be these large, well, they're all large language models, but you'll have these really general ones that are very powerful across a lot of parameters. But increasingly you'll get like a really good healthcare one, or maybe like a really good elder care one that's really focused on, and it's much more highly accurate in that. So it'd be interesting, in the different applications. Like, I don't know, maybe there'll be like a restaurant LLM that'll be loaded into your
Absolutely.
into your tabletop.
Absolutely. And I think that's going to be an interesting journey. But there's another school of thought which feels that there is some people worrying that a ChatGPT 6 could be an AGI, right? I think that's unlikely, because LLM, the way it's designed to run, I think it has hit its peak. So I don't think there'll be so much of a drastic change on the next version of LLM coming out, right? I think we need a new paradigm, like a new LLM. It's going to happen in the next 5 years for the next leap. So we're not going to see a lot of progress from the LLM. I mean, this is my take on it, right? And I think an AGI, LLM on its own is already exhibiting some level of AGI, right? If you think about it, there is some level of AGI it's exhibiting. It can answer. It can prepare very good legal notices for us. We tried that. It does a lot of good market research. It's writes pretty compelling emails. So I think it's already behaving like an AGI from some aspect. But I really don't think a ChatGPT 6 or a 7, or even if you increase it to 10 billion parameters, I think the whole model has hit its threshold, right? I think we need something new for us to move forward. This is my 2 cents on it.
That's interesting. Yeah. So it'll be a new paradigm. Maybe it won't be a transformer model kind of thing, right? And I see a lot of work, like I mentioned, in making these more smaller, lighter, more focused models. That's going to be a lot of work over the next few years, because I think, ChatGPT is great at these general tasks, but it really does kind of fail when you get really deep on something, particularly if, it doesn't have access to the data that you have. Right. So,
sure.
And then, like I just see like the amount of data you guys must be collecting on having these things in the field must be like a gold mine, right?
Absolutely.
Going forward, that sort of dark data to a ChatGPT, right? All this data you're getting in the interaction. So that'll be a powerful tool. Well, excellent. Any last words? I know there are going to be a bunch of senators and congressmen calling you about killer robots and how do we stop them. But so Arshad's the guy to go to. He's going to be our man on the front lines. Maybe it's just get like better killer robots before the other killer robots come out. That's the key.
Sure. As I said, Alan, I think I'm very optimistic. I think I think it's going to create a better future. It's going to empower a lot of space travel. I mean, we're going to have a very different 100 years because of AI. I think that's my 2 cents. Even longevity, I think we're going to all live up to 150 years. So this is what I think it's
So what
going
do
to
you
happen.
think? All right, so I've heard that. Okay, so what do you think AI is going to do that's going to allow that?
I think AI is going to solve a lot of the DNA markers. It's going to do a lot of things in healthcare, where it's going to eradicate and, it's going to decelerate aging for sure. For sure. I think in 10 years, with the data it's collecting, it's very easy to predict, and it's going to kind of unravel everything. So I think living to 150 years, I think it's almost a certainty in the next 20 to 25 years.
Okay.
Right.
So here's my question that I have a suspicion. Don't you think it can make us smarter? Like it can figure out how to manipulate our DNA so that like maybe we can keep up with the AGI?
That's a very good one. It could do that. And I think some of the works that they're doing with Neuralink, where it's actually connected with a lot of external network, could also be instrumental. But I think it could potentially, and again, this is a very, very complex topic, right? In terms of ethics,
of course,
and in terms of, again, I think we're going to be faced with a lot of these challenging questions in the next 10 to 15 years from a legal perspective. See what's happening with autonomous cars. I mean, it's a field day, right? One accident, and you don't know the rules. Who do you charge? Who do you give the ticket to? Who's liable? I think from a legal perspective, there's going to be a lot of new work to be done in the next 10 years. And I think it's coming. If you don't like it, I don't like it, it's not going to matter. It's coming. So we all should be prepared for it. And I'm pretty certain that it'll be for the positive betterment of humanity, for sure. I mean, that's excellent. 2 cents.
That's a great vision. Well, Arshad, thanks so much for joining us today. And it was great. It's fascinating work. So, and if people want to find out more, where would they reach out to you?
They can always go to a website. We have a lot of stuff on a website, including videos, white papers, case studies, and we are very responsive on the website. And we have several initiatives also that we are starting, and a lot of press writing about us, including Fast Company, Mashable, Popular Science very recently. So I guess everybody loves AI and robots. It's not Leo, so I think it's quite.
Of course, everyone loves that. It used to not be cool. Now it's super cool. So we'll put some of that in the show notes, and that's inGenDynamics.com, right? For someone who wants to check out the website. But
so thank you, Alan. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time today, and you have a good one. Okay.
AI, Government and the Future is brought to you by Corner Alliance. To find out more about Corner Alliance and how we work with government to create results, visit our website at corneralliance.com. And then make sure to search for AI Government Future in Apple Podcasts, Spotify and Google Podcasts, or anywhere else podcasts are found. And click subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. On behalf of the team here at Corner Alliance, thanks for listening.